Okay, I am back and the shower pan liner is set. As you can see, this clearly went way above 8 inches, 9 inches. It's probably a good part of a foot, if not 14. And this is probably about a foot also. Typically the pan liner needs to come at least to, where the 2x6 was that I set. So that's about 7 inches more or less. And that 7 inches is fine. And as a rule, we like to see 6 to 8 inches, the more the merrier. It used to be, back when I first started doing this, I would come down to where my blocking was, and if I had excess, I would just cut off at the top of the blocking all the excess and throw it away. And then I came to realize it really doesn't matter if there's excess, The wallboard is going to overlap this by a good 8-9 inches, especially on this one, and, the more the merrier. As far as, keeping water out from all this wood and all that stuff. Of course, there's another process to the wallboard and red guard and waterproofing and all that other stuff, but it's irrelevant to this. So what is relevant is that you not perforate this pan. So when you're actually screwing to the wall, don't come in here with a razor knife or any type of blade or anything where you could accidentally perforate this pan. It is a pretty thick rubber, but it will tear relatively easily, especially with a razor knife, and the last thing you want to do is have to start over, because inevitably you would have to. You could theoretically patch this, you could get a little extra scrap material. They have a special glue that if you perforated, you would overlap it a few inches and make a square, circle, whatever, and then you could glue it down, and that might work. But for the purposes of safety, I don't know if it would work or not. You would basically have to replace the whole liner. So don't have anything sharp in there. The way I screw in as far to the top as I can. Again, back in the day when I used less pan liner, then I would come down here to where the top of the blocking is, which I have screwed in there because I'm trying to get the fold pushed up against the wall as much as possible. That's not a big deal. If you ended up with right at the blocking top and started screwing at the very top of the blocking, don't have an issue with that either. But in this case, because I have so much excess, just by default, I'm going to screw it as far up as I possibly can. And it goes all the way around, so basically each stud gets a screw, a couple screws there, and then as we go along the line, each stud gets a screw until we end up at the end. The fold is always done on the inside, so the fold should never be on the outside here. As you notice, the fold is on the inside over there, and on the opposite corner of where I'm at. The fold should always be on the inside. So you just fold it around like that, screw it up, and then with your razor knife, you're going to go to the bottom of the curb and cut you this direction, not straight up, but this direction, so you have a little extra, both on that corner and this corner, and then you just wrap the excess material around to the bottom of the curb, and you screw it in tight at the very bottom. Nowhere on the inside, just the bottom. It'll hold very nicely, especially when this pan, as I said earlier, is heated up. And then the little excess I had at the bottom, of course, I just cut that off with the razor knife. So that's all there is to setting the pan. The next step is to get this configuration back into there, and this is very specific, so I'm going to, the best that I can, set up my camera in such a way that you can watch how I do this. Let me see how this will work. Yeah, that'll work. Wish I could set it up a little higher like that. I just don't have the ability to do videos where I have a good focal point. But anyway, so what I'm doing right now, just in case you're wondering, is I'm feeling around for the main hole of the drain, which is a 2-inch drain. And let me show from the top if I can. So you see the perforation, not perforation, but you see where my thumb is pushing down where that hole is at. So I want to discover where that hole is at really well, because I'm going to perforate right there in the center with my razor knife. So from the center, actually from almost the edge to almost the edge again. When I say almost the edge, I'm still an inch away, a good inch away. So I see other tilers that come in here and literally make a circle in this pan liner. I really don't understand how they're going to make an entire circle around here and have a possibility of water ever seeping up under there, although they claim, oh, I run a bead of caulking silicone or something up there, and then when this part gets pushed down, I guess they're pretty confident that that silicone is going to work, and I've never ever done it that way. So the first little perforation I make in here obviously is just a square, and one of the reasons I make it smaller than I need to is I can go up under here and feel the hole. So there's 4 holes where these bolts go into. So of course the next process is doing the same thing with those holes. I'm going to make a little square, if I can show. Alright, so clearly I have my thumb on one of those holes right there, and I'm going to make a very, very tiny square in there. Very, very small. Now I've seen some tilers that actually set these bolts first, or they'll set them up under, they'll try and screw them in up under this direction, and then they'll make the little square that I'm doing on top of the bolt. But this is a rather large head compared to the diameter of the bolt, so I'm not about trying to stretch out the material in order for the material to slip over the head. It makes more sense to do it right here and then push the smaller end of the bolt through, and you want to make sure that it's difficult. That way you know that it's good and tight, and then once you hit the hole, you just start screwing it down, push down the remainder. So I'm going to do the same thing that I've just done on the remainder 3 holes. Very, very, very snug fit around those bolts, and that's exactly what I want. And that's it. And then once all 4 of those bolts are set in place, you may have to go ahead and cut out this liner. I'm about 1 inch off from the edge here. I'm going to cut to where I'm maybe about 3/4, because it's going to be very tight to get this other flange in if I don't open this up a little bit more. And then this is the flange we're dealing with. So the same one that you saw me take off earlier, it's the complete opposite. You know, before it was counterclockwise that we turned it, now it's going to be clockwise. So you're just going to set it down in here. Let me see if I can do this with one hand. And push it down to where those bolt heads are popped through. And in this case, that center part is sticking, which I really, really like. That means it's very, very tight. So in this case, I turned the bolts down too far for the first run, so I'm going to loosen them up a little bit and try again. So in this case, it would be clockwise that I'm turning it in order to seat it into those little openings there. And then we're set. And you see when I cut the square there that all my flaps of my excess liner go straight down in the drain, which is exactly the way I like doing it. I ain't saying that there's a wrong way or a right way. I'm saying that through the years, this is what has worked best for me, because I've never had an issue of leakage up under my pan liner. I've never had any type of callbacks, and it's always worked for me. As I said earlier, there's other ways that people do it, and maybe they haven't had callbacks or ever a leak issue, or anything like that either, in which case, you know, that's great for them. But I don't believe I will take the chance of making that happen, because there's not an easy fix. If you do this part wrong, there is no easy fix. The whole pan on all the material and your tile going up the wall here has to all be taken out. So basically you're redoing your pan, which is not a fun or easy process to do, especially for a homeowner, or for me for that matter, when I have to redo a pan. It's about a 5-day job for me because of dry time and stuff like that. So then, of course, the barrel of the drain flange goes down. Make sure you got a good thread on it. It's usually better to turn it backwards first until you hear it click. Right there. Then you turn it down, oh, I don't know. The rule of thumb is that you're going to be about 2 inches of mortar here, 1 3/4, 2 inches of mortar here. So by the time you get down to the edge of the drain, you should be about 3/4 of an inch to an inch, because you're going to get about a 1/4 inch per foot of slope with that mortar. I never measure it out that way. You're welcome to if you want to. I've just been doing it so long, I kind of do it second nature. There's another method. Let me find a little scrap 2x4. There's another method that you can use, and I'm putting this out there. It's not that I do it, but I'm just showing that there are different methods that might work easier for you rather than do it by eyeball the way I do it. Get a scrap piece of 2x4, which is actually 1 3/4 inches, and you set it up against the pan liner, and then you get a Sharpie and you mark that line right on the pan liner. And you do that all the way around. So once you do that, you know for sure that when you start setting your mortar in here, that line is going to be your earmark. In this particular case, I wouldn't do 1 1/4 inches. I would probably rip this down to about 2 inches. I want a little bit more thickness because this is a pretty good sized pan. So I rip a 2x4 down to about 2 inches, and then I would set it up there. If you had a 2-inch something that you could use, maybe a level would be 2 inches. You just set it up against the wall here and put your mark exactly where you want it. Then when you start slopping your mortar around, you have exactly the same amount of mortar on the edge as you do for the left side, right side, front, back, everywhere. And then of course at that point there, the slope would give you the idea. So theoretically, if I set this up on here and I took a level, I don't know where my levels are at. There's one. And I took a level and set it there, pretending that this is my mortar bed, right? And then I set it on my drain, and then I see my bubble, and I'll turn it upside down so you can see it better, or right side up rather. So I see my bubble is off to the left, but it's not far off to the left, it's just barely there. So it doesn't take much for me to get it up, you know, level like that. So in that case, what I would do is just lower the drain. And once I lower the drain, now my bubble goes way back. So you have a good natural slope that's going to go down the drain. So if you did nothing else and all you did is slopped in your mortar at this point where you're marking down to your drain, you're going to have a perfect slope. And there's other little tricks out there. There's a product called Pitch Perfect, which are just rails that go in here. You cut each one according to your pan. You fill in your mortar inside the rails and you have a perfect pitch down to your drain. But I'm not going to get into that. Next step is pouring, and that's kind of a misnomer. I call it slopping my mortar in. You're not really pouring it in, but I will get to that momentarily once I start the process.